All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We are tackling a huge topic today, one that I think really hits home for a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are talking about focus, or more accurately, how to find it in a world that honestly feels like it's constantly trying to pull our attention in a million different directions.
It's a real struggle.
It is, and it's something so many of you have been requesting. So we're going deep. We're going to dive into Eyal's book, Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. We really immersed ourselves in this one.
Oh, yeah.
Our goal, simple. We want to extract the most valuable, actionable insights from it. The stuff that you can actually use to take back control of your attention and start living more intentionally, on your own terms.
I think that's something we all crave, more control, less just reacting to everything that's thrown at us.
Totally. And what's interesting about Eyal is that he also wrote Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products.
Oh, right. The book that was basically like a Bible for tech companies trying to, hook us on their apps and services.
Exactly. So he's got this really unique perspective. He knows how these incredibly engaging products are designed, which means he also understands the mechanics of distraction better than almost anyone. And more importantly, he knows how we can counteract those forces.
It's like he's got the antidote because he created the problem.
In a way, yeah. And right off the bat, in the introduction of Indistractable, there's this personal story from Nir that I think a lot of us can relate to. He talks about how he missed this really precious moment with his daughter because he was like totally absorbed in his phone.
Oh, I've been there. That sinking feeling when you realize you've just missed something important because you're, scrolling or whatever.
Ugh, yeah, it's the worst. And he talks about how he was dealing with something that seemed so urgent at the time, but looking back, it totally wasn't.
Happens all the time, doesn't it?
All the time.
Yeah.
And that story, it just highlights the real-life consequences, right? Like,
Yeah.
it brings it home. We're not just talking about productivity tips here. This is about our lives. It's about missing out on the things that truly matter because we're letting distractions rule us.
It's almost like a wake-up call, like, hey, this is what's at stake here if we don't figure out how to manage our attention better.
Right. So Eyal lays out these 4 key strategies for becoming indistractable. And that's what we're going to explore throughout this deep dive, starting with mastering internal triggers. Now, the core idea here is this. Distraction, it's not always about what's happening around us. It often starts from within.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's not just the pings and the notifications, it's something deeper.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're trying to escape some kind of discomfort, some internal feeling we don't want to deal with. And so we reach for our phone, we get lost in the YouTube spiral, whatever it is. It's all about avoiding that discomfort.
Makes sense. It's almost like when you put it that way, time management is really just pain management in a sense.
Right. And Eyal even says that, like, straight up, time management is pain management. And he illustrates this with this story about Zoe Chance, a Yale professor who teaches persuasion, ironically.
You'd think she'd be like immune to getting hooked on stuff, right?
You would think, right. But she talks about how she got totally obsessed with this fitness tracker, Strive. And I mean, obsessed. Like, she was walking thousands of stairs in the middle of the night just to rack up points and beat her previous records.
Wow. Okay, that's intense. But I can kind of see it. Those trackers can really gamify things and make you crave those rewards.
Totally. It shows you how even things that are seemingly positive, like a fitness tracker, can become a source of harmful distraction if we're not careful.
Yeah. And it really highlights Ariel's point about motivation, right? Like, we think it's all about seeking pleasure, but he argues that a lot of it is actually about escaping the pain of wanting.
The pain of wanting, yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
And he connects it to this ancient Greek philosopher, Epicurus, who believed that pleasure is actually just the absence of pain, like in your body and your mind. So distraction, in a way, is like this quick fix for some internal discomfort.
So when we're reaching for our phone, it's not necessarily because we're chasing some intense joy from scrolling through Instagram.
Right. It's more like, oh, I'm feeling bored or anxious or whatever, so let me just check this real quick and make that feeling go away.
Exactly. And Eyal talks about how important it is to distinguish between those surface-level distractions, like the notification itself, and the root cause, which is that internal trigger. He uses this analogy of a pool game.
Oh, okay, I like analogies. Lay it on me.
So the cue ball hitting another ball, that's the obvious cause of the ball moving, right? But the root cause is actually the player's strategy, how they aimed the shot. So the notification popping up, that's like the cue ball. But the real reason you got distracted is that underlying feeling you were trying to avoid.
So it's like, don't just focus on the notification. Ask yourself, okay, what was going on right before that? What was I feeling? What was I trying to escape?
Exactly. And then Eyal gets into this really interesting point about our evolution. He says that our brains are actually wired for this near constant state of discontentment.
Wait, so it's like built into us to be dissatisfied?
In a way, yeah. And as much as that can feel negative, he points out that this dissatisfaction has also been a huge driver of progress throughout history. It's what pushes us to innovate, to find better ways of doing things.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not a bad thing in itself. It's just we need to learn how to manage it.
Yeah, exactly. And so EL lays out these 4 specific steps to help us manage these internal triggers.
Okay, let's hear them. I'm ready to take notes.
Step 1, pay attention to the emotion that comes right before you get distracted. What are you feeling in that moment?
Right. Notice that feeling.
Step 2, write it down. Actually make a note of that internal trigger.
I can see how that would be helpful, like just making it more concrete, bringing it to the surface.
Exactly. Step 3, this is a big one. Explore that negative sensation with curiosity, not with judgment.
So instead of beating myself up for feeling restless or whatever, try to understand it.
Yeah, like what is this feeling? What might it be trying to tell me?
Okay. Curiosity over criticism.
Yes. And step 4, be extra mindful during what Eyal calls liminal moments.
Liminal moments. What are those?
It's those transitions between tasks or locations, like when you're wrapping up one meeting and heading to the next, or you finish one task and you're about to start another.
Oh, I get it. Those in-between times when you're kind of like vulnerable to distraction.
Yeah, exactly. And he illustrates this with this really interesting example of flight attendants. Apparently, their cravings for cigarettes were actually strongest upon landing after a long flight, not during the flight when smoking was impossible.
Really? That's fascinating. So it's like because they couldn't smoke during the flight, the urge actually intensified when they finally had the opportunity.
Exactly. And Eyal calls this surfing the urge. Like, acknowledge the feeling, ride it out, and know that it will pass. Don't give in to it.
Surfing the urge. I like that. Okay, so that's mastering those internal triggers. What's the next strategy?
All right, so the next one is making time for traction.
Traction. Okay.
Eyal defines traction as any action that moves you towards what you actually want in life. It's the opposite of distraction, which pulls you away from your goals.
So it's about being intentional, right? Like knowing what you want to do and then doing those things.
Yeah, and Eyal really emphasizes the importance of planning ahead here, because without a plan, it's hard to know the difference between traction and just another form of distraction disguised as being busy.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like if you haven't actually defined what you should be doing, then anything can feel productive, even if it's just busy work or checking email for the 100th time.
Exactly. And to help us with this planning, Eyal introduces 3 main life domains where we spend our time.
Yeah.
You, relationships, and work.
Okay, that makes sense. Like those are the big buckets, right?
Yep. And he argues that to live in alignment with your values in each of those areas, you got to proactively block out time for them. Time boxing, he calls it. Actually schedule specific slots in your calendar for activities within each domain.
So it's like treating those appointments with yourself just as seriously as you would a meeting with your boss or a client.
Exactly. Exercise, sleep, reading, hobbies. These aren't just extras you squeeze in if you have time. They're investments in yourself, and they deserve dedicated time in your schedule.
I like that. It's like putting yourself first, in a way.
Absolutely. And Eyal even shares this story about how he struggled with insomnia and how his anxiety about not being able to sleep was actually making it worse.
Oh, I've been there. It's like the more you worry about it, the less you sleep.
Totally. And he talks about how he shifted his focus from the outcome, like falling asleep immediately, to the input, which was just giving his body the time and the right environment for rest. And he even had this mantra, the body gets what the body needs.
Interesting. So it's like focus on what you can control, not on the things you can't.
Precisely. And he talks about applying this to relationships, too. He gives the example of his fun jar with his daughter.
Fun jar. That sounds cute.
It is. They write down fun activities on slips of paper and put them in the jar, and then they schedule dedicated time to pull one out and do it together.
Yeah.
And he also makes sure to schedule regular date nights with his wife. These aren't just things that happen if they have time. They're intentionally blocked out on the calendar.
Makes sense. It's easy for those things to slip away if you don't make them a priority.
Totally. And Eyal even brings up a really important issue, the unequal distribution of housework in heterosexual couples.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
He references research from Darcy Lockman on this, and he connects it to the value of equality. He says that being explicit about scheduling can help address these imbalances and make sure that both partners are contributing fairly.
So it's about like actually putting those shared responsibilities on the calendar and making sure they happen.
Right. And then for broader social connections, he talks about having a kibbutz.
A kibbutz, like the communal living thing.
Yeah. But in this context, it's just a regular gathering with friends. Again, the point is to proactively schedule it in.
Gotcha. So whether it's family, close friends, or even just broader social connections, the message is make time for it.
Yep. And then in the work domain, Eyal talks about the importance of syncing up your schedule with key stakeholders, your boss, your colleagues, anyone whose work intersects with yours.
That makes sense. It's like being on the same page about priorities and availability, right?
Exactly. He shares an example of this woman, April, an advertising sales exec, who started having a quick 15-minute sync meeting with her manager every week. And it made a huge difference. It helped her minimize distractions, gain more control over her day, and free up more time for the important stuff.
Okay, so the takeaway here is be proactive about planning and scheduling across all these areas, you, your relationships, and your work. And then communicate those plans to the people you need to.
Exactly. All right, ready for strategy number 3?
Hit me with it.
Hacking back external triggers. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty of dealing with all the external stuff that's constantly trying to grab our attention.
So the notifications, the emails, all that jazz.
All of it. And to understand how these triggers work, EL introduces the fog behavior model. It basically says that for a behavior to happen, you need 3 things at the same time: motivation, ability, and a trigger.
Okay, so you got to be motivated to do something, you got to be able to actually do it, and then something has to trigger that behavior.
Exactly. And those external triggers, like that notification ping or the little red dot on your email icon, that's the prompt that sets the behavior in motion.
Makes sense, but here's what I find so interesting. EL points out that even just receiving a notification without even acting on it can be distracting.
Yeah, isn't that wild? He references this study in the Journal of Experimental Psychology that found exactly that. And researchers at the University of Texas have this term brain drain.
Brain drain.
Yeah, they say that just having your phone nearby can use up mental resources, even if you're trying to ignore it. It's like your brain is constantly working in the background, resisting the urge to check.
Oh, so it's like even if you're being good and not checking your phone, just having it there is still costing you something mentally.
Exactly. It's like a little drain on your attention battery. So Eyal says, whenever you encounter an external trigger, ask yourself, is this trigger serving me or am I serving it?
Ooh, I like that. It puts it in perspective.
Right. If it aligns with your plans and your goals, then it's serving you. But if it's pulling you away from what you intend to do, then you're at its mercy.
Okay, so how do we hack back these external triggers, especially at work?
Eyal gives some great examples. Like he talks about nurses in some hospitals wearing these bright orange do not interrupt vests.
What? That's amazing. Do they actually do that?
Yeah. And it's been shown to significantly reduce medication errors. In one study, they saw a 47% reduction in errors just from wearing those vests.
Wow. So it's like creating a clear signal that, hey, I need to focus right now. This is critical.
Exactly. And he compares it to the sterile cockpit rule in the airline industry, where they strictly limit non-essential activities during critical phases of flight. It's all about minimizing interruptions to prevent potentially catastrophic mistakes.
Makes you wonder why we don't have more sterile cockpit time in other professions, right?
Right. So obviously, most of us aren't going to be rocking orange vests at work. But you'll suggest having a physical sign on your desk like, I need to focus right now, but please come back soon.
I love that. It's so simple, but it sends a clear message.
And then, of course, there's the beast of email.
Ugh, email. The black hole of productivity.
Right. He throws out some pretty sobering stats about how much time we spend on it and how many of those emails are just unproductive. He even gives this equation. Total time spent on email equals the number of messages times the average time spent per message.
So simple, yet so scary when you think about it.
I know, right? So he gives some practical tips for managing email, like setting specific office hours for responding to non-urgent stuff, slowing down your email delivery so you're not hitting send immediately, and resisting the urge to reply to every single message as soon as it comes in.
All good advice. I think I need to implement some of those, like yesterday.
Me too. And group chat. He doesn't hold back there either. He quotes Jason Fried, the co-founder of Basecamp, who said the group chat is like being in an all-day meeting with random participants and no agenda.
Oof, that's a harsh but accurate comparison.
Right. So Eyal recommends scheduling specific times to check and engage in group chats. Don't let it become this constant interruption throughout your day.
Makes sense. Treat it like a meeting, not like a never-ending stream of distractions.
And then there are meetings themselves. The unproductive ones, that is.
Oh yeah, the meetings that could have been an email.
Exactly. So he suggests being super selective about who actually needs to be there, having a clear agenda circulated beforehand, and even going device-free during the meeting.
All good practices. I feel like a lot of companies are trying to be more mindful of meeting overload these days.
It's definitely a trend, thankfully. And then Eyal gets into all the ways we can hack back phone distractions, starting with our home screens. He suggests creating what he calls an essential home screen.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So he breaks it down into categories: primary tools, aspirations, and slot machines.
Slot machines. Okay, that's an interesting way to think about certain apps.
Right. And the idea is to remove anything that doesn't fit into those categories. So you're only left with the tools you actually need, the apps that support your goals, and maybe a few slot machine apps for pure entertainment.
So it's like being really intentional about what you allow to occupy that prime real estate on your phone.
Exactly. And he suggests turning off all non-essential notifications, both the sounds and the visual alerts.
Yeah, those little red dots are like attention vampires.
Totally. Use your Do Not Disturb features liberally. And even consider wearing a watch so you don't have to pick up your phone just to check the time.
Ah, that's a good one. I've definitely fallen into the trap of checking the time and then getting sucked into my phone.
Oh yeah, we all have. And Eyal also talks about the importance of decluttering our digital workspaces, like our computer desktops.
You mean actually organizing all those files and icons?
Yes. He mentions this guy, Robert Van Els, who found that having a clean desktop background and using the search function instead of tons of icons made a huge difference in his focus.
Interesting. And there's actually research to back that up. Eyal cites a study from Princeton that found that visual clutter can significantly impact our cognitive performance.
It's like our brains are working overtime to filter out all that noise.
Mm-hmm.
And then, for managing internet distractions, he suggests using apps like Pocket to save articles for later, and then time-boxing when you'll actually read them.
That's a good strategy. I have a tendency to go down those internet rabbit holes if I'm not careful.
Oh, me too. And he talks about this concept of multi-channel multitasking.
Wait, isn't multitasking supposed to be bad?
It can be if you're trying to do two mentally demanding tasks at the same time. But multi-channel multitasking is about pairing activities that don't require a lot of focus on both ends, like listening to an audiobook while you're commuting or doing chores.
Okay, that makes sense.
And he recommends using browser extensions to control your online experience, like DFTube to get rid of those distracting YouTube recommendations or tools that hide social media feeds.
There's a tool for everything these days, isn't there?
It seems like it.
Mhm.
And then finally, Eyal talks about effort packs.
Effort packs, what are those?
It's about intentionally making distracting behaviors harder to do. He gives the example of Jonathan Franzen, the writer, who famously disables the internet on his writing computer.
Wow, that's hardcore.
It is. And there are apps that can help with this, like Self-Control, Freedom, and Forest. They let you block distracting websites and apps for specific periods.
Okay, so it's about like putting up those digital barriers to prevent yourself from giving in to temptation.
Exactly. So that's a whole lot of tools and techniques for dealing with those external triggers. Ready for the final strategy.
Bring it on. Let's wrap this up.
All right. The last one is all about preventing distraction with packs.
Packs. Interesting.
Yep. This strategy is all about pre-commitments. It's about making decisions in advance that help you stick to your intentions and avoid getting derailed by distractions later on. Eyal even brings up the classic Ulysses Pact from Greek mythology.
Oh, yeah, the one where Ulysses tied himself to the mast of his ship so he wouldn't be tempted by the siren's song.
That's the one. So one type of pact Eyal talks about is the price pact.
A price pact? What's that?
It's basically putting money on the line as an incentive to stick to your goals.
So, like, if I don't achieve X, I lose Y amount of money.
Yep. And Eyal shares this study from the New England Journal of Medicine on smoking cessation. They found that the people who had to put down a deposit and risked losing it if they failed to quit had the highest success rate.
Wow, so having some skin in the game really works.
It seems like it. But Eyal also cautions that this might not be the best approach for everyone, especially people who tend to be self-critical.
Yeah, I can see how that could backfire.
Definitely. And then He talks about identity packs.
Okay, what are those?
This is about changing your behavior by embracing a new self-image. Eyal shares this study from Stanford, where they found that simply using the noun voter when encouraging people to vote was more effective than using the verb to vote.
Really? So it's like thinking of yourself as a voter makes you more likely to actually vote.
Exactly. And Eyal says that telling others about your new identity and incorporating rituals can help solidify those identity packs.
Interesting. So it's like making it more real, more tangible.
Yeah, and he gives examples like religious practices and even a ritual someone created for reducing their calorie intake.
Okay, so we've covered the four key strategies, but there's got to be more to it than just personal techniques, right? Like, what about the environment we're in?
Oh, absolutely. AL dives into the impact of our work environment on our ability to focus and also on our well-being in general.
Yeah, I think we all know that feeling of being in a distracting environment. It can be draining.
Totally. And he references this study by Stansfield and Candy that found that job strain, which is basically having high expectations with low control and a lack of psychological safety, were major predictors of depression in the workplace.
So it's not just about the physical distractions, but also about the social and emotional environment.
Right. And psychological safety is a really important concept here. Ale draws on the work of Amy Edmondson, who says that it's about creating an environment where people feel comfortable taking risks, admitting mistakes, asking for help, without fear of being penalized or judged.
So it's like feeling safe to be yourself and to make mistakes without being shamed or punished.
Exactly. And Ale connects this directly to fewer problems with distraction and overall happier employees.
That makes a lot of sense. If you're feeling stressed and anxious all the time, you're going to be more likely to seek out distractions as a way to cope.
Totally. And he gives examples of companies like Slack and BCG that are intentionally fostering this kind of environment. They prioritize psychological safety, encourage open discussion, and their leaders actually model focused work behavior.
So it's not just about telling people to focus, it's about creating a culture that supports focus.
Right. And then Al tackles a topic that's on a lot of parents' minds: how to raise indistractable kids in today's world.
Yeah, with all the screens and technology, it's definitely a concern.
It is. And Al acknowledges those societal fears. He references research by Gene Twenge and others who have studied the impact of smartphones on kids. But he also points out that correlation doesn't equal causation. I mean, he highlights research suggesting that moderate screen time might not be as harmful as some people think.
So it's not about demonizing technology completely, but about teaching kids how to manage it.
Exactly. And he brings in self-determination theory, which says that kids have these three basic psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
Okay, so they need to feel like they have some control over their lives, like they're good at things and like they belong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when those needs aren't met, kids might be more likely to seek out unhealthy distractions online.
Makes sense. It's like filling a void.
And Eyal also talks about the decline of unstructured free play, how kids these days have so much of their time scheduled and controlled by adults. He references the work of Peter Gray, who says that free play is crucial for social development, creativity, and even the ability to focus.
So it's not just about limiting screen time, it's also about giving kids the space and freedom to just play and explore.
Right. And Eyal suggests involving kids in setting limits on their tech use and explaining the reasons behind those limits. He also shares this great example from Lori Getz's father, who focused on the impact of her behavior on others rather than blaming the device itself.
That's a really smart approach. It's about helping kids understand the consequences of their actions.
Exactly. And he recommends practical strategies like time boxing for devices, teaching kids to tell themselves "not yet" when they feel the urge to grab a screen, and empowering them to manage their own time.
So it's about giving them the tools and skills to regulate themselves rather than just imposing rules from above.
Exactly. And he stresses the importance of family time, like having device-free meals together. And he even says that sometimes parents are the ones enabling tech overuse. We got to set those boundaries. He compares it to teaching a kid to swim before letting them loose in a pool.
I love that analogy. It's so true.
And he strongly advises against screens in kids' bedrooms. He emphasizes the importance of enough sleep, and he suggests a cool test for tech readiness.
What's that?
It's about seeing if a child can manage their device settings to turn off those external triggers.
Oh, that's smart. It's like a measure of how much control they have over their tech use.
Exactly. And Eyal reminds parents not to be those unwanted triggers themselves, like respecting their kids' scheduled focus time and not interrupting unnecessarily. He even shares a story about how he involved his 5-year-old daughter in deciding her daily screen time limit.
Oh, wow. And did it work?
Yes, surprisingly, she set a reasonable limit herself. It's a great example of fostering that autonomy.
That's amazing.
Okay.
Okay, so we've covered internal triggers, traction, external triggers, packs, the work environment, raising indistractable kids, anything else?
Actually, yeah, Eyal wraps up the book by talking about how to have indistractable relationships.
Oh, that's a good one. I feel like distraction can be such a problem in relationships these days.
Totally. And he highlights this idea of social contagion, how distraction can be contagious in social situations, like one person pulls out their phone and then everyone else follows suit.
Ugh, I hate that. It's like we're all so quick to disengage from each other.
Right. And Eyal introduces this concept of social antibodies.
Social antibodies. That
Yeah.
sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's like societal defenses against harmful behaviors. He uses the decline of smoking as an example.
Oh, I see. So it's like as a society, we've developed these norms that make smoking less acceptable, and that's helped to reduce it.
Exactly. And he suggests tactful ways to address phubbing, which is like snubbing someone by being on your phone.
Yeah, like what's a polite way to say, hey, put the phone away and talk to me?
He suggests something like, I see you're on your phone. Is everything okay?
Okay, that's good. It's non-confrontational, but it gets the point across.
And Eyal even shares his own personal experience with this. He talks about how he had this, like, love affair with gadgets that was negatively impacting his relationship with his wife.
Oof, I can relate to that. Technology can be such a seductive mistress.
Right. And he talks about the strategies they implemented to become more present with each other, like keeping phones out of the bedroom, having a 10-minute rule before using devices in the evening, even using timer outlets to shut off the internet at certain times.
Wow, they went all in. But I guess that's what it takes sometimes to reclaim your attention in your relationship.
It seems like it. And he even points to specific chapters in the book that are particularly relevant for building indistractable relationships.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that becoming indistractable is not just a quick fix. It's like a whole way of life.
Totally. It's about understanding those internal and external triggers, putting those strategies in place, and being intentional about how you manage your attention, your time, and your energy.
And it's something that requires constant effort, right? Like it's not a one and done thing.
Absolutely. It's a skill you got to keep practicing and refining.
And being kind to yourself along the way, I think. Like, don't beat yourself up if you slip up. Just get back on track.
For sure. So for you, our listener, what resonated with you the most today? What's one or two actionable steps from Eyal's framework that you can implement in your own life starting right now?
And here's a question to really ponder. How might cultivating indistractability not only boost your productivity, but also deepen your relationships with yourself and the people who matter most to you? What amazing moments are you maybe missing out on right now because of distractions? And what small change can you make today to reclaim your attention and start experiencing those moments more fully?
That's a great question to leave everyone with. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Indistractable. We'll see you next time.
See you then.